Hi, I'm Cris, CEO of Coalition of Conservation. I'm here in Toronto with Ted O'Brien, Shadow Minister for Energy and Climate Change. We're here as part of a delegation, doing some due diligence and learning more about how the US and Canada are going to decarbonize their energies by 2050. So Ted, because we are very far from Australia, about 9,000 miles, how the Canadians would say, and because it's a Sunday, we think maybe leave politics aside and let's just talk about this trip. I just wanted to ask you so far, and before that actually, for some context, what made you come to this part of the world and why this delegation?
Well, if Australia is to seriously consider the possibility of nuclear energy being part of our future energy mix, we've got to learn from people who know far more about this than we do, and that includes the United States and Canada. And it helps that they are very close allies of ours. And so as I'm formulating policy on behalf of the coalition, I've got to make sure I'm doing the homework. We've got to do our due diligence, and that means being humble enough to say, yep, we're a nuclear nation already, we've got a reactor, we sell uranium, we've got nuclear propelled subs coming, but when it comes to nuclear energy, we're not the experts in this field, and so let's come to the United States, let's come to Canada, and let's see what we can learn.
That's great. So walk us through what the journey has been. I know you started in the US, and what have you seen so far?
Well, look, we've met with a whole range of people, from academics to think tanks to vendors who are designing new nuclear reactors, through to government officials, and just spoken to everyday people about the topic. And I think it's that diversity of views and expertise which is really helping the delegation, ensuring that we are equipping ourselves with the sort of knowledge we need to apply to the Australian context and say, right, what can we learn from them that helps us think through the possibility of becoming a newcomer in nuclear energy?
Yeah. To me, being with you in this journey, starting in Washington, one of the things that I felt was quite surprising is the amount of bipartisanship on this issue in the US, and how the Democrats and the Republicans and the general public and communities are supportive of that.
You are so right. Yeah. And it's something too that I really noticed. And look, let's face it, the United States and Canada are robust democracies, exactly like we are. And they've had their fair share of partisanship, including on issues of climate change and energy, just like Australia has. But when it comes to nuclear energy, there seems to have been an emergence of bipartisanship. And that's fascinating. And while the left of politics may approach the issue of nuclear energy different from the right of politics, they've landed at the same spot. They've landed in a place that has said nuclear energy is important to our future energy mix. And bipartisanship has laid the foundation for innovation, for next generation technology, and for a series of government policies and regulations that are going to facilitate the development of this technology. One day, hopefully, we will have true bipartisanship in Australia on the need for us to be agnostic, or as the Americans say, adopt a posture of all of the above when it comes to using different technologies to solve the challenges of climate and energy.
Right. The other surprising thing for me, who used to be not really pro-nuclear at all, from being more neutral and now from understanding the technology, the safety side of it, and how much innovation there is in this area. What do you think about what's happening in terms of the new generation, or the small modular reactors that you've seen here? All these different technologies just coming out.
So exciting, right? I mean, the days of old Soviet era nuclear reactors are gone.
Absolutely.
No one wants that stuff. I think what we are witnessing is a complete paradigm shift when it comes to nuclear energy. And the next generation, zero emissions nuclear reactors are totally changing the game, particularly in the United States and Canada. Countries that are pioneers in this field, countries that understand the technology, and they are paving the way for a very different future, one that still puts at the center of their energy system the importance for affordability and reliability, but suddenly now they are ramping up on a technology that provides 24/7 reliable energy that can ramp up and ramp down, working in partnership with renewables. And so it's that using nuclear energy really as a key enabler to decarbonising their economies while remaining prosperous and strong. Now, that in itself is a huge lesson that we need to learn from as Australia. And so what part of that do we wish to adopt? Do we want to go down that path?
Yeah, you made a great point, because Australia has the potential and is already becoming a powerhouse of renewables. We've got, rooftop solar is #1 in the world. We're investing in wind, we're investing in a number of other things. And what we've seen here is this great alliance between how we can assist renewables and how we can promote it, and how can they work together.
Exactly. And Cris, I mean, one of the things that's always frustrated me about the Australian debate, whether it's climate change or energy, is often it's set up as this binary choice that technologies have always got to fight each other. And you're either on the side of renewables or you're on the side of something else. Whereas what we are learning from other countries is the countries that are decarbonising their economy, maintaining reliability and affordability, are having all technologies on the table.
Right.
And it's just being honest and saying, look, each technology has strengths, each technology has weaknesses, just like human beings, right? I mean, we've all got our strengths, we've all got our weaknesses. How best do we get a mix of technologies where one technology's strength can offset another technology's weakness? And that's why that all of above approach, it's pragmatic, it's practical. And the thing that occurs to me is Australians are renowned around the world for being pragmatic, practical people. And so I love the expression that particularly the Americans use of all the above. Because it's simple, it's open-minded, it's not taking a big punt saying this technology is good, that one's bad. It's saying, we're going to need a whole bunch of different technologies if we're to pull off decarbonisation. And I think that's just a wonderful starting point for every country.
Yeah, that has been the common message on both sides of politics and from the general public and everybody that we met so far, that we need every sort of technology. In that mix, we can't put all our eggs in one basket.
Exactly. The Democrats I've met, the Republicans I've met, they're all saying the same thing, right? It doesn't mean that there's everyone's holding hands on every political issue. I mean, again, robust democracies, but they're the starting point, the basic platform from which they're launching towards decarbonisation is one of being technology agnostic. And I tell you, if we can get Australia to that point, we're going to be in a far better position.
Just moving from technology itself to now energy security and what's happening around the world. Because we've heard from a lot of legislators on both sides of politics again, how concerned the US is.
Yes.
And how important it is for them, how important Australia is for them in this pathway, the nuclear pathway that they're building, for us to be part of that. Because then, building these alliances, especially with Australia, would help them develop their technology to the point that when it comes to us, it's being tested.
Yeah, and look, if we can be pretty candid, we know that the world is in a very critical phase right now as the major powers have a period of, let's say, competitive coexistence. Now, we know that while Russia is preoccupied very much with Ukraine, China is moving as fast as it can on its development of cutting-edge technologies. So too is the United States.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not one who believes at all in an economic decoupling from China, but there is no doubt that with cutting-edge technology, whether you're talking quantum computing, space, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, or indeed the next generation of zero-emission nuclear technology, these technologies don't just require technological innovation. but supply chains and international alliances so that they can grow and establish standards and protocols internationally. And it's in our interest as a nation, as Australia, to ensure that we remain in a rules-based liberal order. And that means having fellow democracies like the United States establishing those international standards. And so the extent to which Australia can partner with the United States, if it helps the states and it helps Australia, while also ensuring it is establishing rules-based liberal standards across the world with new technologies, well, that's a good thing. And it's a reminder, I think, as we look at the issue of nuclear technology, to not just focus on the immediate challenge. You know, Australia doesn't live in a vacuum. We are part of a broader world. We are one of the free trading nations of the globe. It is in our interest to take a very strategic perspective when it comes to nuclear energy, be holistic in our approach and long-term in our thinking. And meeting with a lot of people in the United States and Canada has helped firm that view for me, that we've got to be very strategic about how we tackle this challenge.
Agree. And I'm very much, as an environmentalist, as carbon-free means of generating energy, you know, nuclear is one of the number one carbon-free, and if not the best. But on the other hand, just to, you know, play the devil's advocate a little bit, as a mother, you know, I've always had some concerns with waste and what they call spent fuel and safety issues. So what have you learned in this trip that made you either change your mind or reinforce what you felt about this side of the story of the nuclear industry?
And Cris, I mean, I can't talk for you, but I hear what you're saying. And I feel the same as a dad, right? I mean, I've got a little boy at home and I've got a little girl.
Yeah.
And if everything around particularly the climate agenda talks about net zero 2050, if I throw myself forward and say, well, in 2050, my now little children will be adults. What sort of world do I want them to live in? What sort of Australia do I want them to live in? I don't want to go near a technology that is going to compromise their way of life, let alone their safety. And this trip has only given me more confidence that nuclear technology is safe.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I think most Australians would just be shocked at, right? I reckon if you walk down the main street of anywhere in Australia and you said, here's a list of different technologies, which is the most safest in the world.
Yeah.
And you went through all the renewables and then coal and gas, of all of the energy generating technologies in the world, which is the most safest, I think very few people would say nuclear. But in fact it is, right?
Yeah.
And all the evidence is there.
Statistically, it is.
It is. It has proven to be the safest.
The perception is wrong.
The perception,
we have to change
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah.
We have to change it. But what's more, what makes me even more confident about the future is the new nuclear reactors. Again, because the game has changed.
Yeah.
And the design, especially around this, you know, what they refer to as Generation 3 Plus and then Generation 4 nuclear reactors, just raises the importance of safety and use of waste even within the reactors themselves far more proficiently. And they are coming up with solutions on waste that are even better than what exists today. And today happens to be the safest form of energy generation the world's ever seen. So it is nevertheless an issue for the everyday person because, you know, over time, you know, whether it be through Godzilla, whether it be through The Simpsons, sure, nuclear's, you know, gathered a reputation. But when the facts do the talking, as a dad, I'm extremely comfortable.
Yeah. And lastly, I guess a lot of people think that it's too late for Australia because we don't have an existing nuclear industry, therefore it might be too late, it might be too expensive. There's all sorts of counter arguments. I mean, I've been reassured here that it's never too late, and we're looking at reducing emissions not until 2050, but for a long time ahead of us, and we need to really guarantee sources of energy that are clean but also cheap. So what do you say to these people if they come to you and say it's too expensive or it's too late?
Well, I think, look, anybody who believes that you can tackle the challenge of climate change within a 5-10 year period and then everything is fixed are either naive or dishonest.
Yeah.
Again, when my kids grow up and they're my age and older, there will still be a challenge in this world.
Yeah.
And we still need to keep the lights on. We need to make sure energy is affordable. That challenge will never go away. And if we are fair dinkum about trying to decarbonise the economy while keeping Australia prosperous, strong, and fiercely independent with our own energy security, we have to have all the technologies on the table. There are some technologies, no doubt, that can come on the grid very quickly. And there are other technologies like nuclear energy that will take some time, especially for a newcomer like Australia. But if Australia were suddenly to adopt nuclear energy, right, by the time you have new reactors coming online in Australia, well, you'll still be replacing an entire fleet of solar farms, of wind turbines, right? And so, again, it comes down to we need to be long-term. We need to be holistic.
Yeah.
Issues of energy and climate, they're tough. They're not easy.
True.
And this is why we need all the help we can get. And that help comes from our allies, like the United States and Canada, but it also comes from technologies. And the last thing we need when we face a big challenge is to start taking a key technology off the table, especially nuclear energy, which as of today represents 20% of the United States and 15% of Canada's electricity generation.
Yeah. One beauty about the industry here that I've noticed is how much they've included community and regions in their development.
Yeah.
And to the point that some regions are actually, you know, wanting it now.
Isn't that extraordinary?
So that was an extraordinary finding for me. That and it makes sense because it brings jobs and prosperity and clean and cheap energy eventually. So
exactly. I mean, the job situation is amazing. What it does for regional communities, and you're right. In Australia, where we talk about do people want nuclear energy or not, where different states or provinces have looked at nuclear energy, they've got communities saying, pick us, right? Especially because these are communities that understand the jobs that come from it. They appreciate the safety that exists.
yeah,
It's, this thing boosts economies and it's going to provide sustainability. These aren't short-term assets. These can be assets now that might last 100 years. And so people are thinking not just about their children, but their children and their children. When you actually do have proven technologies. So, but for Australia, we, like the United States and Canada, we're a democracy. And so there's no greater prerequisite than a social license, than a community acceptance of any major energy technology, whether it be a big transmission line, whether it be a big gas plant, or indeed a nuclear plant. You need to respect community, including First Peoples, Indigenous peoples. And that's all part of it. And we've been learning about that too.
that's right. We're almost at the end of this journey, Ted. So back home, what now? From now, what's your plan?
Well, we continue on the journey of formulating policy. And I've never been one that's been, shaking the pom-poms, yay, nuclear, but rather more saying, we've got a big challenge ahead. Nuclear could be part of it. We'll continue the due diligence as we try to formulate a policy to take Australia forward. But again, that policy will be one looking at particularly clean energy and asking ourselves the question of how do we reach 2050 as a nation that remains prosperous, strong, and fiercely independent? What energy mix do we need? What market behind that energy mix should be structured? And we'll be doing that with experts, Cris, and which is why the broader delegation has been important for this. Each person brings their skills. Just like technologies have their different skill sets, so too do individuals. And certainly having you on this trip has been vitally important too, because you brought your own skill set to it. As we've gone through each meeting, and we've had our economists and engineers and other experts. Again, it's that team approach that ultimately wins out and makes sure we take home the best of the knowledge we can, so then we can apply it in the Australian context. So thanks for joining it.
Thank you, Ted. And on behalf of Coalition for Conservation, I really want to thank you for getting out of your way, coming all the way here to talk to international experts, international legislators. It's really important to do that because this is a global issue that requires a lot of global solutions, and we need to have our allies aligned with us in this and exchange ideas, solutions, and be part of this global problem that climate change is. And I think with your role, it's been really important to do this due diligence trip. So we thank you for that.
Thank you, Cris.
For bridging policymaking with climate expertise, which is what we need.
Wonderful.
So we'll see you back in Australia.
Sure will.
Hopefully you will be telling everything you've told us to a wider public there.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in the sunshine between you.
Yes, please.